also because I think you found me on the YouTube, right?
Yeah.
So let me start from there, because what I feel, especially in the last 20 years or more, and I feel now, right now, in this, I'm in the little small hotel room, but this everything is about Kaizen, and it's so interesting to optimize, utilize the best of what I have without waste, and from series Seton and the organization, but also within myself, and all the ideas of the Kaizen, plan to check, act, and so forth, and also lower inventory. I was just posting the other day that the inventory is also within our brain. You know, there's so much information and it's not clear, so you have to organize area. And I'm still working on the Toyota production system to live my life.
Yeah.
And what's in, and also the quality, and the, you may know, the mini company idea, you know, things like that. And what is interesting to me, I don't know if you have seen it, is that because of the change of the environment, and we go through so much change and turbulence, and the core of the Toyota production system and so forth is about the wisdom. It's not the technique and do it, but rather keep coming up with the wisdom. But even if you say what's required for the amount required at the right time, you know, all that kind of a just-in-time concept is almost like living in the now, instead of too much information and that you get clogged up. And when I talk about the mini company glass wall management and the mini company annual report, that is to have the ownership for each person to manage life. So I'm living like that, and it's embarrassing. I may not be practicing what I wrote in the book sometimes. So all I do here and how I live, and there's a connection to it. And when I think like that, I start to think that there's a good reason those ideas came from Japan, from the basic nature of working to make together, and not just, well, how can I explain this? Even related to Zen and the philosophical or religious viewpoint of appreciating life and stuff like that. So you may have noticed that I'm trying to see how this idea, I call it the self-managing, more of a self-managing, destiny in your hand, is important, especially thinking of the future, not to be bound by the money and the fame and all that, but the pride and connecting to the heart and be happy in what we do. And therefore, with the AI and the technology, my concern is we don't have the clear picture of what is the meaning of life and how you can find happiness to contribute, and also relating to the change of the society, be ready to change so that you have a self-managing capability, which is more of a mini company kind of idea. But also, if you look at the lean and the flow and the inventory and reducing the inventory and exposing the problem, we need to have it in our mind to not digesting all the information, but be able to be gemba in living life, to, you know, something of that nature. So I think it's good to talk about it, even though it may be a little difficult and nebulous to talk, but you know, it's interesting to, if I can communicate. But because you have seen me in the YouTube and you read the 3 books, so you may have some sense when I say about the technology, AI, and the turbulence, and the money and the pressure, and still find your own identity and be flexible and do the things required when it's required and the amount required, all that kind of idea. With the process control, a PDCA. But when I say PDCA, I don't know if you noticed that the PDCA is still a little bit in the brain area. And there's a Shila Samadhi Panya. I don't know if you read that, but the Shila is right conduct, Samadhi is the quiet mind, and then come up with the wisdom. So PDCA to me is more of the brain, but if you connect to the heart where we came from, what I see is that where we came from is the miracle of the universe, that we are born and be able to live. And if we can connect to that, instead of just using the brain, but connecting to the heart, that's the third book. And maybe here's a little discussion I may, be curious to ask is that because the third book, the first two books had sold well, and when I wrote it, I thought it may last 20, 30 years and still selling, not a huge amount, but I'm happy. And especially the second book too, because second book has a mini company, glass for management, ownership, empowerment. And the third book is kind of repeating the second book, but with a little different dimension. I didn't use the word Shila Samadhi Panya, but connecting to the heart. And there's a discussion about the Kegon and the Dalai Lama, because Kegon is the concept from Japanese or the Buddhist sutra. And when we talk about the Kegon, Tibetan Buddhism and the Dalai Lama can understand what I'm talking about. So I asked him to give a forward, and I got the forward from him. So he agreed, and what he said is that I said, use the brain and listen to your heart and live with the mission. But his comment is, use the brain, but at the same time, listen to your heart and live with the mission. So when I read that, and I thought, he is really understanding the meaning, because if you just think and sometimes listen, you're just going back and forth, that's better. But ideally, you want to connect the whole thing, align to practice. So PDCA and the Shila Samadhi Panya and the Kegon idea, mini company, and all of that is all connected to the view of how to empower ourselves, find a meaning in what we do. So obviously, work is a very important part of our life, but not just work, but managing our life is what I start to be more interested. And therefore, I haven't spent much time. I spent 40 years working with companies to help transform. And when I reflect back, it's wonderful, beautiful. I call it organizational enlightenment. But it may not stay. Even very, very wonderful company that I worked, and also the huge company, they get certain level, but you may not go beyond that. And I have to accept it because of the money and the constraint they have. But still, especially when it comes to AI and when the food and the stuff become cheap, and for us to not so much depend on working and eating and so forth. Eventually, my vision is that the robot, everything gets cheap, and what do you do at the time? So I'm thinking that that situation. How can we be empowered and still find the destiny in what they do? And so that's basically is where I'm standing. And there for the last 20 years or so, I'm shifting more into that direction of the third book, Results from the Heart. And it's very difficult to communicate, but that's what I thought. And what I feel is that if I write, people may read it, but it's only a small area. So if that's the case, I should not just spend time, because writing is not easy, especially those kind of discussions. So I'm playing with YouTube to see how I can communicate. So that's my background and up to my current situation of who I am. So if you can understand.
No, yeah, I understand.